Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Clayton Mercer's calloused hands moved with practiced precision across the metal lathe. Metal shavings scattered like silver confetti as he shaped the cylindrical piece with methodical care. The factory floor hummed with activity around him, but his focus remained unwavering. 20 years in machining had taught him that attention to detail wasn't just good practice, it was survival. "Hey, Clay," the voice of his supervisor, Bill Tanner, broke through the mechanical symphony. "Got that order finished for Westbrook Industries?" Clayton nodded, switching off the lathe. "Just finishing the last piece now. It'll be ready for quality check in 30. Bill clapped him on the shoulder. "That's why you're lead. The other guys would still be calibrating." He lowered his voice. "Speaking of which, heard about the engagement. Congrats, man." A hint of a smile crossed Clayton's otherwise stoic face. "Thanks. When's the big day?" 3 months from now. Nothing fancy." Bill chuckled. "Yeah, right. Wait till your future mother-in-law gets involved. My wife's mom turned our simple ceremony into a 3-ring circus." Clayton's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Darla Brock had already started her campaign for an event worthy of Eugene's social pages. He'd been fighting that battle for weeks. "We'll see," he said simply, turning back to his work. When his shift ended, Clayton drove his well-maintained but decidedly unfashionable pickup truck through the familiar streets of Eugene. The city had changed over the years, more tech startups, more hipster coffee shops, but the bones remained the same. Working-class neighborhoods like the one he'd grown up and sat within miles of the sprawling estates, where families like the Brocks resided. He pulled into the modest cemetery on the east side of town. The late afternoon sun cast long, gentle rays across the grounds as he made his way to a simple headstone set beneath an oak tree. Mary Ann Mercer, 1962 to 2023, strength grows in the moments when you think you can't go on. Clayton knelt, brushing away fallen leaves from the base of the stone. "Hey, Mom." He came every week, rain or shine. These quiet conversations helped center him when life got complicated. And lately, things have been very complicated. "Wedding plans are moving along," he continued, his voice softening. "Not exactly how I pictured it, but Delaney's excited." He paused. "I think she is anyway." The wind rustled through the oak branches above. Her mother asked if we could move your photo from the memorial table at the reception. Said it might bring down the mood. His fingers traced the engraved letters of his mother's name. "I told her it wasn't negotiable. You raised me alone? Worked 2 jobs when you had to. You deserve to be there." Clayton sat in silence for a few moments, watching the shadows lengthen across the cemetery. "I wish you could have met her properly, not just that one time. You'd have seen through all this stuff." He sighed. "Warren says I'm making a mistake. Maybe I am. But when Delaney's not around her parents, she's different. Kinder." He stood, dusting off his jeans. "Anyway, I should go. Dinner at the Brocks tonight." His expression hardened slightly. "Give me strength, Mom." The Brock residence stood in stark contrast to the modest 3-bedroom ranch house Clayton had inherited from his mother. Their colonial-style mansion, complete with manicured gardens and a circular driveway, screamed of old money and social aspiration. Clayton parked his truck between Mercedes and a BMW, already feeling out of place. Delaney answered the door before he could knock, her face lighting up with a smile that still, despite everything, made his heart skip. She wore a sleeveless black dress that probably cost more than his monthly car payment, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. "You're here." She pulled him inside, pressing a quick kiss to his lips. Her perfume, expensive and subtle, enveloped him. "Daddy just opened a bottle of Cabernet from his private collection." Clayton followed her into the dining room, where Darla and Silas Brock already sat at an immaculately set table. Crystal glinted in the chandelier light. Silver cutlery flanked fine china plates. "Clayton." Silas stood, extending a hand. His grip was firm, but somehow dismissive, as if shaking hands with a subordinate rather than his future son-in-law. "Glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," Clayton replied evenly. Darla's smile never reached her eyes. "We were just discussing the wedding photographer." I've scheduled meetings with 3 options next week. 3. Clayton frowned. Delaney, and I already booked someone. Jack Reese did my buddy Warren's wedding last year. A look passed between mother and daughter. Darla's eyebrows arched slightly. Sweetie, Delaney said, placing a hand on his arm. Mom found someone who's done spreads for Portland Monthly. His work is amazing and costs triple what we budgeted, Clayton pointed out. Silas chuckled, swirling wine in his glass. Consider it our gift. When you have a once-in-a-lifetime event, you don't pinch pennies. It's not about pinching pennies, Clayton said quietly. It's about sticking to what we agreed on. Well, Darla interjected, her tone sugar-coated steel. Sometimes agreements need to evolve. I'm sure your mother taught you to be adaptable. Clayton's knuckles whitened around his fork. He felt Delaney tense beside him. My mother taught me that your word is your bond, he replied, keeping his voice level. But yes, she was adaptable. Had to be, raising a kid alone after my father split. An uncomfortable silence fell. Delaney jumped in, her voice artificially bright. The floor is called today. The peonies are going to be perfect. Dinner progressed with surface-level pleasantries, but the undercurrent of tension remained. Every comment from Darla seemed designed to subtly remind Clayton of his place below theirs. Silas dominated conversation with stories about business connections and country club politics. A.S. dessert was served. Silas turned to Clayton. So, have you thought more about my offer? The shipping department could use someone with your mechanical aptitude. It wasn't the first time the offer had been extended. A token position at Brock Freight that would effectively put Clayton under Silas's thumb. I appreciate it, Clayton said, but I'm happy where I am. 20 years in the same field builds a reputation. That matters in my line of work. But surely there's no room for advancement in machining, Darla said, the words sounding like a disease in her mouth. Clayton met her gaze directly. I'm lead supervisor now. Next step is operations manager when Bill retires next year. The pay's competitive, and I still get to work with my hands. How quaint, Darla murmured. Delaney squeezed his knee under the table, a silent plea for peace. Later that night, back at his house, Clayton watched Delaney remove her makeup at his bathroom sink. This had become their routine 3 nights at his place, for at her downtown apartment. The disparity in their living situations seemed more pronounced tonight. Your mom really doesn't like me, he observed. Delaney sighed, patting her face dry with a towel. She's just protective and old-fashioned about certain things. Certain things like men who work with their hands for a living. She turned to face him, leaning against the counter. It's not personal, Clay. They're just used to a different world. And you? He asked the question that had been gnawing at him. Are you sure this is what you want? A life with someone from a different world? Delaney crossed to where he sat on the edge of the bed. She straddled his lap, draping her arms around his neck. I love you, she said, looking into his eyes. You're real in a way no one in my parents' circle is. You say what you mean. You don't play games. She kissed him softly. That's why I said yes when you proposed. Clayton wrapped his arms around her waist, wanting to believe her. When they were alone like this, it was easy to forget the doubt that crept in during events like tonight's dinner. I love you too, he said, and he meant it despite the warning bells that sometimes rang in the back of his mind. The next day, Clayton met Warren Easley at their usual spot, a no-frills bar called the Rusty Nail that had been serving the working class of Eugene for decades. They sat in a corner booth, cold beers in front of them, the familiar sounds of pool balls clacking and classic rock playing in the background. Warren, a construction foreman with arms like tree trunks and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, studied Clayton's face. Another fun night with the in-laws from hell. Clayton shook his head ruefully. There's something else. So why are you doing this? Warren asked bluntly. And don't give me that love crap. I've known you since we were knocking each other's teeth out in Little League. Something doesn't add up. Clayton took a long pull from his beer before answering. When it's just Delaney and me, it's good. Really good. She's not like them. Bullshit, Warren snorted. Apple doesn't fall that far from the tree, Clay. She might be playing nice now, but give it time. You'll be wearing custom suits and joining the country club before you know it. It's not like that. No. Warren leaned forward. Then why's the wedding suddenly a 3-ring circus? Why she let her mother run roughshod over everything you two supposedly agreed on? Clayton had no good answer. You sure you want to sign up for life with this circus, Clay? Warren asked, his concern evident. Once those papers are signed, you're in it. Their family drama becomes your drama. She makes me happy, Clayton said finally. That counts for something. Warren raised his hands in surrender. Your life, your choice. Just remember, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. They changed the subject, talking about the Ducks' chances in the upcoming football season, but Warren's warning lingered in Clayton's mind. The weeks passed, and Clayton found himself becoming increasingly sidelined in his own wedding plans. What had started as a ceremony with 70 guests had ballooned to over 200, most of whom Clayton had never met. The venue changed from a rustic winery to the Eugene Country Club. The budget doubled, then tripled. It's just one day, Delaney would say whenever he objected. Don't you want to be perfect? Perfect, Clayton realized, was code for meeting Darla Brock's standards. One Saturday, he found himself trapped in a suit fitting while Delaney and her mother critiqued every aspect of his appearance. Maybe we should go with the darker gray, Darla suggested, circling him like a shark. It has a slimming effect. Clayton's jaw tightened. He wasn't overweight. Years of physical labor had given him a solid, muscular build that most men would envy. I like the blue, Delaney countered, surprising him with a small act of defiance. It brings out his eyes. Darla pursed her lips. Well, at least make sure they tailor it properly. We don't want him looking like he rented it from a discount shop. The tailor, a slight man with measuring tape draped around his neck, pretended not to hear as he marked adjustments. Later, as they exited the boutique, Darla pulled out her phone. We should head to the caterer next. I've been thinking the salmon option might be too common. Perhaps a beef tenderloin instead. Mom, Delaney protested weakly. We already confirmed the menu. And now we're unconfirming it, Darla replied briskly. The Hendersons had salmon at their daughter's wedding last month. We need something more distinctive. Clayton watched this exchange with growing frustration. He caught Delaney's eye, silently asking if she was going to stand firm. She gave an almost imperceptible shrug, surrender. Actually, Clayton said, his voice firm but calm, I need to head to Warren's. We're helping his brother move today. Darla's expression soured. On a wedding planning day? Surely your friend can handle moving furniture without you. I gave my word, Clayton replied simply. I'll be there for the cake tasting tomorrow. He kissed Delaney goodbye, feeling Darla's disapproving gaze on him as he walked to his truck. That evening, while helping move Warren's brother into a new apartment, Clayton felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Here, among friends who asked nothing of him but his company and occasionally his strong back, he could breathe. Earth to Clayton, Josie Mercer, his cousin, snapped her fingers in front of his face. Petite but fierce, with the same stubborn Mercer chin, Josie had always been more like a sister than a cousin. Where'd you go? Just thinking, he replied, setting down a box labeled kitchen. About the wedding from hell. Her directness was refreshing after a day of Darla's passive-aggressive comments. Clayton shrugged. It's important to Delaney. Is it? Josie challenged. Or is it important to her mother? Because from where I'm standing, Delaney's letting you get steamrolled. Before Clayton could respond, Warren joined them, beer bottles in hand. Steamrolled is putting it mildly. It's more like watching someone being slowly erased. Clayton accepted the beer, but frowned at his friend. That's a bit dramatic. Is it? Warren countered. When's the last time you went fishing? Or came to poker night? Or did anything that wasn't wedding-related or Brock family approved? The question hit home. Clayton realized it had been months since he'd engaged in any of his usual activities. Somehow, between work and wedding planning, his life had narrowed to what the Brocks deemed acceptable. I'm just busy, he deflected. It happens. Josie and Warren exchanged knowing looks. Look, Josie said gently, we like Delaney. She seems sweet. But this whole situation feels off. You're not yourself lately. Clayton wanted to disagree, but deep down, he knew they were right. The subtle erosion of his independence had happened so gradually he'd barely noticed. It'll settle down after the wedding, he said, more to convince himself than them. Once all this planning madness is over. The following week, Clayton found himself at a dinner with some of Delaney's oldest friends, people she'd apparently known since childhood, but whom she'd never mentioned until the wedding planning began. The restaurant was upscale, with white tablecloths and servers who described each ingredient as if it were a rare artifact. "So, Clayton," asked a woman named Vanessa, who wore enough diamonds to fund a small country, "Delaney tells us you're in manufacturing?" The way she said it made it sound like he built bombs in his garage. "I'm a machinist," he replied, cutting into his overpriced steak. "Lead supervisor at Precision Tool and Die." "How fascinating," Vanessa's husband remarked with precisely zero fascination. "I suppose we all need practical skills in this world." Delaney jumped in. "Clayton's being modest. He's up for operations manager next year. The company produces components for aerospace and medical equipment. Very specialized work." Clayton shot her a grateful look. "Well, not everyone grows up knowing which fork to use," Darla commented with a thin smile. "Thank God Delaney's teaching you." A ripple of polite laughter circled the table. Clayton felt his ears burn as he realized he'd been using the wrong fork for his salad. Delaney squeezed his hand under the table, but her laugh joined the other softer but present. That hurt more than Darla's jab. The conversation drifted to topics Clayton couldn't contribute to: vacation homes in the Hamptons, boarding schools, mutual acquaintances he'd never meet. He felt like a spectator at what was supposedly his own engagement dinner. Driving home afterward, silence filled the car until Clayton finally spoke. "You didn't have to laugh." Delaney stared out the passenger window. "What?" "When your mother made that comment about the forks, you laughed." She sighed. "It was just a joke, Clay. Don't be so sensitive. A joke at my expense. In front of people I just met. She didn't mean anything by it." Clayton's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Yes, she did. She absolutely did." Delaney turned to face him, her expression hardening. "What do you want me to do?" "She's my mother. I want you to stand up for me," he said quietly. "The way I stand up for you." "When have you ever had to stand up for me?" she challenged. "Last week, when Warren made that comment about your shoe collection. I shut it down immediately." Delaney rolled her eyes. "That's hardly the same thing." "How is it different?" "It just is." Her voice rose. "God, why are you making such a big deal about this?" "It was a stupid joke about forks." Clayton pulled into his driveway and turned off the engine. In the sudden silence, he could hear both their breathing, his measured, hers quick with annoyance. "It's not about the forks," he said finally. "It's about respect. Your family doesn't respect me or where I come from. And sometimes I wonder if you do either." Delaney's face softened. She reached for his hand. "That's not fair. I love you, Clayton. I chose you." The sincerity in her eyes made his resolve waver. When she looked at him like that, it was easy to believe that what they had was real, that it transcended the class differences and family objections. "I know," he conceded. "It's just been a lot lately. The wedding's stressful for everyone," she said, unbuckling her seatbelt to slide closer to him. "But it'll be worth it. I promise." As her lips met his, Clayton pushed his doubts aside. The connection between them was what mattered. The rest was just noise. But later that night, as Delaney slept beside him, Clayton stared at the ceiling, Warren's words echoing in his mind. "You sure you want to sign up for life with this circus, Clay?" He wasn't so sure anymore. Friday evening found Clayton working late, finishing a rush order for a client whose production line had gone down. By the time he clocked out, it was past 8, and his dinner plans with Delaney had to be canceled. She'd been understanding on the phone, suspiciously so, considering how she usually pouted when their plans changed. "It's fine, really," she'd assured him. "I'll just grab dinner with Madison. We've been meaning to catch up anyway." Clayton had been relieved, but also slightly curious. Madison was a friend from Delaney's college days who rarely made appearances in their social circle. He stopped by the Rusty Nail on his way home, hoping to grab a quick beer and unwind after the long day. The bar was busier than usual for a Friday, packed with the after-work crowd. Clayton nodded to a few regulars as he made his way to the bar. "The usual?" "Tom," the bartender asked. "Make it a double," Clayton replied, rolling his stiff shoulders. "Been a day." As Tom set the whiskey in front of him, a familiar voice called his name. He turned to see Josie pushing through the crowd toward him, her expression unreadable. Didn't expect to see you here, he said as she reached him. Josie glanced around before speaking, her voice low. I need to talk to you. Privately. Something in her tone set off alarm bells. Clayton left his untouched drink on the bar and followed her to a quiet corner near the back exit. What's going on? Josie took a deep breath. I was at Latelier with Meg tonight. Latelier was one of Eugene's trendier wine bars, not Josie's usual scene. Meg wanted to try it, she explained, reading his expression. Anyway, we were there, and I saw Delaney. Clayton frowned. With Madison? Yeah, they were supposed to have dinner. Josie's expression tightened. Not with Madison, Clay. With Seth McAllister. The name landed like a punch to the gut. Seth McAllister owned Apex Fitness, an upscale gym that catered to Eugene's elite. He was known around town for his good looks, his money, and his habit of pursuing attached women. Maybe it was business, Clayton said, though he knew how ridiculous that sounded even as the words left his mouth. Josie shook her head. It wasn't business. They were in a back booth. He had his hand on her thigh. They were. She hesitated. Tell me. They were intimate, Clay. The way they leaned in to talk. The touching. I watched for 15 minutes before coming here. They kissed twice. Clayton felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. A cold, numbing sensation spread through his chest. You're sure it was her? I'm sure. Josie confirmed gently. I'm so sorry, Clay. Clayton nodded mechanically, processing. Part of him wanted to race to Latelier and confront them, but a deeper, more calculating part, the part that had learned from his mother's quiet strength, held him back. Did she see you? He asked. No. They were pretty absorbed in each other. Clayton checked his watch. It was nearly 9. She told me she'd be home by 11. At her place. What are you going to do? He considered the question carefully. I'm going to wait. And then I'm going to have a conversation. Josie looked worried. Do you want me to come with you? No, Clayton decided. This needs to be between us. He spent the next 2 hours at home, sitting in his darkened living room, turning over every interaction, every strange moment from the past few months. How had he missed the signs? Or had he simply chosen not to see them? At exactly 11:15 p.m., he drove to Delaney's downtown apartment. Her car was already in its assigned spot. Clayton sat in his truck for several minutes, gathering his thoughts, reining in his emotions. This wasn't going to be a scene. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction that he used his key to enter the building and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Outside her door, he paused, listening. The television was on some reality show Delaney enjoyed. He knocked, 3 firm raps, the volume lowered immediately. Footsteps approached, and then the door swung open to reveal Delaney in loungewear, her hair damp as if she'd just showered. Clay. Her surprise seemed genuine. I thought you were working late. Finished earlier than expected, he replied, stepping past her into the apartment. It smelled of scented candles and the expensive shampoo she used. Thought I'd surprise you. That's sweet, she said, closing the door. I was just about to make some tea. Want some? Clayton turned to face her. How was dinner with Madison? Something flickered in Delaney's eyes, a momentary calculation. Good. We went to that new Thai place on 5th. You'd hate it way too spicy. Funny, Clayton said, his voice controlled. Josie thought she saw you at Latelier night. With Seth McAllister. The color drained from Delaney's face, but she recovered quickly. Oh, we did stop there. For a drink after dinner. Seth was there with some clients, and we said hello. Madison knows him from the gym. Where's Madison now? Delaney blinked. She went home. Obviously. Call her, Clayton challenged. Right now. Put her on speaker. Don't be ridiculous, Delaney snapped, crossing her arms. I don't have to prove anything to you. You were alone with him, Clayton stated. In a back booth. Josie watched you kiss him. Anger flashed across Delaney's face. Your cousin is mistaken. Or lying. Josie doesn't lie. Well, she's wrong. Delaney's voice rose. Seth's a friend. Yes, we had a drink. Nothing happened. Clayton held her gaze steadily. I'm only going to ask you once, and I want you to think very carefully about your answer. Are you having an affair with Seth McAllister? No. Delaney's denial was vehement. I'm not cheating on you, Clayton. You're paranoid. Paranoid, he repeated flatly. Yes. She stepped closer, her expression softening to concern. That's a friend. You're seeing things that aren't there because of your trust issues. My trust issues. Delaney reached for his hand, which he allowed but didn't reciprocate. I know your dad leaving messed you up, and then losing your mom so suddenly, it's natural to be afraid of abandonment. But I'm not going anywhere, Clay. I love you. The manipulation was so transparent, it almost impressed him. Using his deepest wounds against him, suggesting his legitimate suspicions were just psychological damage. That's a friend, she repeated, stroking his arm now. That's all. Your cousin misinterpreted what she saw. Clayton considered pressing further, demanding the truth. But something in him recognized that this moment wasn't the time. He needed more information, more proof. Okay, he said finally. Delaney's relief was palpable. Okay, if you say nothing's going on, I believe you. She threw her arms around his neck, pressing her body against his. Thank you for trusting me. I never hurt you, Clay. As he returned her embrace mechanically, Clayton felt something shift inside him, a hardening, a resolution. He would find the truth. And if his suspicions were correct, there would be consequences. That night, as Delaney slept beside him in her bed, Clayton stared at the ceiling, wide awake. He believed in loyalty above all else. It was the cornerstone of how he lived his life, being true to your word, standing by the people who mattered. If Delaney had betrayed that, there would be no second chances. But first, he needed proof. Irrefutable evidence that even she couldn't deny or explain away. And he knew exactly how to get it. The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of preparations and pretense. Clayton maintained the facade of a trusting fiancé while quietly observing patterns. Delaney's girls' nights became more frequent. Her texts were guarded, always sent from across the room where he couldn't see the screen. She'd changed her phone password. Through it all, Clayton said nothing. He collected mental notes, but took no action, not yet. The timing had to be right. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled at Ambrosia, one of Eugene's most exclusive restaurants. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waitstaff that materialized and vanished with practiced invisibility. The private room overlooked the Willamette River, the city lights twinkling on the water as dusk settled. Clayton arrived precisely on time, dressed in the tailored suit Delaney had insisted on. He greeted guests with handshakes and polite smiles, playing the role expected of him. Inside, he felt removed from the proceedings, as if watching himself from a distance. "There's my boy," Silas Brock boomed, clapping Clayton on the shoulder hard enough to suggest dominance rather than affection. He was already 3 drinks in, judging by the flush in his cheeks. "Big day tomorrow. Having second thoughts yet?" Clayton's smile remained fixed. "Not at all, sir. That's the spirit," Silas chuckled. "A Brock woman's worth the trouble, even if they drive you to drink sometimes. Right, Darla?" Darla Brock approached, elegant in a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than Clayton's monthly mortgage. "Charming as always, Silas." She air-kissed Clayton's cheek. "Clayton, darling, the floor is called. Apparently, there's been a mix-up with the centerpieces. Nothing to worry about, I've handled it." By which she meant she'd overridden whatever Clayton and Delaney had chosen in favor of her own preferences. "As usual." "Thank you, Darla," he replied evenly. She studied him with her calculating eyes. "You seem tense. Wedding jitters." "Just focused on tomorrow," he deflected. "Well, try to enjoy tonight," she advised, patting his arm condescendingly. "It's the last hurrah before you're officially family." The way she said family made it sound like both a privilege he didn't deserve and a burden he should be grateful to bear. Delaney arrived fashionably late, drawing all eyes as she entered in a cream-colored dress that hinted at tomorrow's bridal white. She moved through the room like someone accustomed to admiration, accepting compliments with practiced grace. When she reached Clayton, her smile seemed genuine. "Sorry I'm late. Here, emergency." She kissed him lightly. "You look handsome. You're beautiful," he said, meaning it despite everything. Physical attraction had never been their problem. Dinner progressed with the expected rhythm of such events. Excellent food that Clayton barely tasted. Wine that flowed too freely. Conversation that skimmed the surface of genuine connection. He watched Delaney across the table, laughing at her father's jokes, adjusting her posture to mirror her mother's perfect poise. Was any of it real? Had it ever been? The moment he'd been dreading and expecting came after the main course, when Silas stood to propose a toast. The room quieted as he raised his glass. "I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight to celebrate Delaney and Clayton," he began, voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "When my little girl first told us about the machinist she was dating, I'll admit I had some reservations." A ripple of knowing laughter circled the room. Clayton kept his expression neutral. "But Clayton has proven himself to be a hard-working, decent man," Silas continued magnanimously, as if bestowing a great honor. "And while he may not come from the background we might have expected for our daughter, he clearly adores her. And that counts for something in my book." More chuckles. Clayton's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "To the happy couple," Silas concluded, "may your marriage be blessed with happiness, prosperity, and many grandchildren for Darla to spoil." Glasses raised. Clayton sipped his champagne, feeling Delaney's eyes on him, gauging his reaction. He gave her a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. As conversation resumed, Darla stood, tapping her glass delicately with a spoon. "If I may," she said, commanding attention, "I'd also like to say a few words." The room hushed again. Something in Darla's expression, a slight edge to her smile, put Clayton on alert. "We're thrilled to welcome Clayton into our family, despite his humble beginnings," she started, her voice honey-sweet with venom underneath. "And I know Marianne is watching from, well, wherever." The dismissive wave of her hand as she referenced his deceased mother sent a cold surge of anger through Clayton's veins. Across the table, he saw Warren's posture stiffen, Josie's eyes widen in disbelief. Silas chuckled, and Delaney, instead of objecting, instead of defending her fiancé and his mother's memory, simply added, "Clayton has always needed a bit of polishing." The betrayal was so complete, so casual, that for a moment Clayton couldn't breathe. In that instant, any lingering doubt about what he had to do vanished. These people had shown him who they truly were. Not just Darla and Silas, but Delaney too. They'd humiliated him and dishonored his mother's memory in front of everyone he knew. Clayton didn't explode. He didn't storm out or cause a scene. Instead, he cataloged every face around the table who laughed, who looked uncomfortable, who avoided his eyes. He mentally recorded every detail of this moment, storing it away for what would come next. When it was his turn to speak, he stood slowly, adjusting his tie. The room fell silent. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight," he said, his voice calm and measured, "especially those who traveled from out of town." He raised his glass. "To good friends and family, those here with us, and those watching from above." He held Darla's gaze as he emphasized the last words, a subtle but unmistakable rebuke. To her credit, she had the grace to look momentarily discomfort. The toast concluded, Clayton excused himself quietly. "Stomach trouble," he explained to Delaney. "I think I need some air. Do you want me to come with you?" she asked, her concern seemingly genuine. "No," he assured her. "Stay. Enjoy your family. I'll be fine." As he left the restaurant, stepping into the cool evening air, Clayton pulled out his phone and sent identical text messages to Warren and Josie. "My place. 1 hour. Need to talk." He drove home in silence. No radio, no distractions. Just the steady rhythm of his thoughts aligning into a plan. Warren and Josie arrived together, their expressions grim as Clayton let them into his house. "That was brutal," Warren said without preamble, following Clayton into the living room. "I nearly decked Silas when he laughed at that crack about your mom." Josie nodded, her eyes flashing with anger. "We should have said something. The way they treated you. Clay was horrible." Clayton gestured for them to sit. "Nah," he said quietly. "Not yet." Warren and Josie exchanged glances. "What do you mean, not yet?" Josie asked. Clayton paced the room slowly, hands in his pockets. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About Delaney, about her family, about what kind of future I'd be signing up for." "And?" Warren prompted. "And I'm not going through with the wedding." Josie exhaled sharply. "Thank God. After tonight, I was afraid you'd still go through with it. But I'm not just walking away. Clayton continued, his voice hardening. They didn't just betray me, they humiliated my mother's memory. That's not something you walk away from. Warren leaned forward, suddenly alert. What are you thinking, Clay? I'm thinking it's time for some consequences, Clayton replied. And I need your help. The next morning, Clayton called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Bill was understanding wedding stress. And Clayton let him believe it. Better than the truth. That he was planning to dismantle his engagement in the most calculated way possible. Delaney had texted late last night, checking if he felt better. He'd responded with just enough concern and affection to avoid suspicion. Today, he told her he needed to handle some last-minute wedding details alone. She'd seemed relieved, probably had plans with Seth anyway. At 10 o'clock, Clayton sat at his kitchen table across from Aiden Malloy, a lanky man with shrewd eyes and perpetually ink-stained fingers. They'd gone to high school together, played on the same baseball team. Now Aiden owned Digital Restoration, a computer and phone repair shop downtown. So, Aiden said, pushing his glasses up his nose, "You want me to recover deleted data from a phone?" Clayton nodded. From Delaney's old phone. She upgraded last month, but kept complaining about battery issues with the new one. Said the screen froze sometimes. And you have access to this old phone because I offered to take it to that repair guy I know to see if it was fixable, Clayton replied. She handed it over willingly. It's not breaking and entering if she gave you the device. Aiden studied him carefully. This about the wedding? Clayton met his gaze steadily. This is about the truth. I need to know what I'm dealing with before tomorrow. And if you don't like what you find, then I make different choices. Aiden drummed his fingers on the table, considering. I don't want to get mixed up in something messy, Clay. We go back, but there are lines. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal, Clayton assured him. The phone was given to me voluntarily. I'm asking you to recover deleted files from a device I legally possess. What I do with that information is my business. After a moment's hesitation, Aiden nodded. All right, but I work alone, and I need at least 4 hours. Come back this afternoon. Clayton slid the phone across the table. Thanks. I owe you. Yeah, you do. Aiden agreed, pocketing the device. And Clay, whatever you're planning, be careful. After Aiden left, Clayton made another call, this one to a contact at Westbrook Industries, one of the firms that contracted with both his employer and, apparently, with Brock Freight. Jerry Westbrook had always liked Clayton. They shared a straightforward approach to business that transcended their different social circles. Clayton, good to hear from you. Big day tomorrow, huh? About that, Jerry, Clayton replied, keeping his tone casual. I'm doing some last-minute checks. Delaney mentioned some issues with deliveries from Brock Freight. Anything I should know before joining the family business? Jerry's hesitation was telling. Look, Clay, I don't want to step into family matters. Consider it due diligence. Off the record, a sigh came through the phone. They've been late on the last 4 shipments. Quality control's slipping too. Between us, we're considering other options. Any idea why? Rumor is they're having cash flow problems. Nothing concrete, but the industry talks. Appreciate the heads up, Jerry. Enjoy the fishing trip next month. Will do. And Clay, congratulations. Delaney seems like a wonderful woman. Clayton's smile was bitter as he ended the call. Seems being the operative word. By 4 o'clock, he was back at Digital Restoration, slipping through the rear entrance as Aiden had instructed. The shop was closed, a back in 30 minutes sign hanging in the window. Aiden sat behind the counter, expression grim. You better sit down, Clay. For the next hour, Aiden showed him everything he'd found. Text threads between Delaney and Seth dating back 7 months long before Clayton had proposed. Photos that left nothing to the imagination. Location data showing regular visits to an apartment address Clayton didn't recognize but assumed was Seth's. Clayton absorbed it all with outward calm, though inside, something was breaking apart and reshaping itself into something harder, colder. There's more, Aiden said hesitantly. I found some emails that seemed relevant. He pulled up a thread of correspondence between Delaney and a friend named Veronica. The subject was clear. Clayton was a safe plan amid mounting financial pressure. My dad's company is in trouble, one email read. He says it's temporary, but I've seen the statements. They're behind on everything. Clayton's stable. Boring sometimes, but dependable. And he'd do anything for me. Another. Seth is fun, but he's not husband material. Clay is. I need security right now, not excitement. And finally, the most damning. Clay wanted a prenup, but I talked him out of it. So it was about trust. Men are so easy to manipulate when you appeal to their pride. Clayton read each message twice, his expression unchanging. Only the whitening of his knuckles as he gripped the edge of the counter betrayed his emotion. "You okay, man?" Aiden asked quietly. "Fine," Clayton replied, his voice controlled. "Can you put all of this on a thumb drive?" Aiden hesitated. "What are you going to do with it? What needs to be done?" Clayton met his gaze steadily. "Nothing illegal. Nothing violent. Just justice." After a moment, Aiden nodded. "Give me 10 minutes." When Clayton left the shop, thumb drive secure in his pocket, the sun was beginning to set. He drove to the cemetery, needing the quiet presence of the one person who had never betrayed him to his mother's grave. Clayton stood with his hands in his pockets, watching as golden light filtered through the oak branches above. "They tried to use you against me, Mom," he said quietly. "Try to make me feel ashamed of where I come from, who I am." He took a deep breath. "But you taught me better than that. You taught me that integrity matters, that actions have consequences." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead. "I'm going to make them pay," he continued, his voice hardening. "Not with violence, not with anything illegal, but with the truth. Their own truth thrown back at them." As dusk deepened into darkness, Clayton made his final stop of the day, a local print shop owned by a former high school classmate. By the time he returned home, he had everything he needed for what would come next. Warren and Josie were waiting on his porch, concern evident in their postures. "You've been AWOL all day," Josie said as he approached. "Delaney's been texting, asking if we've seen you." "What did you tell her?" "That you were running last-minute errands," Warren replied. "But she's getting suspicious. Said you weren't answering calls." Clayton unlocked his front door, letting them in. "I've been busy." In his living room, he laid out everything he'd discovered, printouts of text messages, emails, financial records he'd obtained through his industry contacts showing Brock Freight's mounting debt. Warren whistled low. "Holy shit, Clay." Josie's eyes widened as she read through the messages. "That manipulative bitch," she breathed. 7 months? While you were planning a wedding." Clayton nodded grimly. "And it gets better. The Brocks are in financial trouble. Deep trouble. Silas overextended. Took on debt he can't service. They're behind on payments to suppliers, employees, everyone. And Delaney knew," Warren concluded, connecting the dots. "She knew," Clayton confirmed. "She was looking for a safety net. Someone stable. Someone who'd do anything for her." "So what's the plan?" Josie asked. "Because if it involves slashing tires, I'm in." Clayton almost smiled. "Nothing so crude. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, a spectacle. Just not the one they're expecting." He outlined his plan, detail by meticulous detail. When he finished, Warren and Josie sat in stunned silence. "It's brutal," Warren said finally. "Ice cold. They deserve it," Josie countered. "All of them." Clayton looked between his cousin and his oldest friend. "I need to know you're with me on this. It won't work without both of you." Warren extended his hand. "Always, brother. Those snakes had it coming the moment they disrespected you and Mary Ann." Josie nodded firmly. "The Mercers stick together. Always have, always will." As they hammered out the final details, Clayton felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. The path ahead was clear now. No more doubts, no more wavering. Only justice remained. Later that night, he finally answered Delaney's increasingly frantic text with a carefully crafted message. "Sorry for being out of touch. Been thinking a lot. Maybe we rushed to judgment yesterday. Can we meet tomorrow? Just us. We need to talk." Her response came almost instantly. "Yes. Of course. I was so worried. Where and when?" Clayton smiled grimly at his phone. "Our place. 2 p.m. Just want to clear the air before Saturday. I'll be there. I love you, Clay." He set the phone down without replying. The pieces were in motion now. By this time tomorrow, Delaney Brock would understand exactly what it meant to betray Clayton Mercer. The morning of what should have been his wedding day dawned clear and bright. Clayton rose early, made coffee, and reviewed his plan one final time. Everything was in place. The evidence was organized, the venue secured, the invitations sent. All that remained was to spring the trap. At 18 noon, Warren and Josie arrived as planned. They sat at Clayton's kitchen table, the atmosphere charged with nervous energy. "Cold feet?" Warren asked, only half joking. Clayton shook his head. "I've never been more certain about anything in my life." He spread the documents across the table, proof of Delaney's betrayal, evidence of the Brock's financial troubles, screenshots of the cruel comments about his mother. The compiled evidence told a clear story. Clayton had been targeted, manipulated, and humiliated by people who saw him as nothing more than a convenient solution to their problems. "They didn't just betray me," Clayton said quietly, echoing the words he'd spoken at his mother's grave. "They humiliated my mother's memory. That's not something you walk away from." Josie reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Aunt Marianne would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. For standing up for her too," Warren added. "She never took crap from anyone, and neither should you." Clayton nodded, gathering the documents and placing them carefully in a leather portfolio. "It's time." At precisely 2 p.m., Delaney's car pulled into his driveway. From the window, Clayton watched her approach his front door, designer sunglasses, hair perfectly styled, a tentative smile on her face. The picture of contrition, he opened the door before she could knock. "Clay," she breathed, stepping forward to embrace him. He allowed it, but didn't return the gesture. "I'm so glad you called. Yesterday was awful. The things Mom said, I should have spoken up." Clayton stepped back, gesturing for her to enter. "Let's talk inside." Delaney followed him into the living room, her eyes widening slightly when she saw Warren and Josie. "Oh, I didn't realize we had company." "They're just leaving," Clayton assured her. "They stopped by to pick up some things for tomorrow." Warren and Josie exchanged meaningful glances with Clayton as they gathered their coats. The message was clear. Everything was proceeding as planned. "We'll see you tonight," Warren said pointedly, clapping Clayton on the shoulder. Once they were alone, Delaney's demeanor changed subtly. She moved closer to Clayton, placing a hand on his chest. "I've been so worried about you. When you didn't answer my calls, I needed time to think," Clayton replied, his voice neutral. "About us. About tomorrow." A flash of panic crossed Delaney's face. "What about tomorrow?" "I've been thinking a lot about what your mother said. About my humble beginnings." Delaney's expression softened into practiced sympathy. "She was out of line. I should have said something. But you didn't," Clayton observed. "Instead, you agreed that I needed polishing." She winced. "It was a stupid joke. I didn't mean it." Her hand moved to his face, stroking his cheek. "You know how much I love you, Clay. Just as you are." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment Clayton almost admired her skill. "Almost. I've been thinking," he said carefully, "that maybe we rushed into this. The wedding, I mean. It's all happened so fast." Panic flared in Delaney's eyes, quickly masked. "What are you saying? That you want to postpone?" "I'm saying I want to make things right." He took her hands in his. "I think we need a fresh start. Something more honest." Hope bloomed on her face. "Yes, that's exactly what we need." "I was thinking," Clayton continued, "we could have a small dinner tonight. Just us, your parents, a few close friends. A recommitment of sorts. Before the big day." Delaney's relief was palpable. "That sounds perfect. A chance to clear the air." "I've already spoken to your parents," Clayton lied smoothly. "They're on board. I've booked the private room at Marquet. 8 o'clock. You've thought of everything." Delaney marveled, wrapping her arms around his neck. "This is why I love you. You always know how to make things better." Clayton returned her embrace mechanically, his eyes fixed on a point over her shoulder. "I've invited a few others too. For balance." "Who?" "Warren and Josie, of course. A couple people from work. Seth McAllister." He felt her body stiffen against his. "Seth? Why would you invite him?" Clayton pulled back, his expression carefully neutral. "You said he's your friend, right? I thought it would be good to clear the air with everyone. Show there are no hard feelings. I just don't think it's necessary." Delaney began. "It's important to me," Clayton cut in, his voice firm. "If we're going to start fresh, I want everything out in the open. No secrets. Something flickered in Delaney's eyes, calculation, perhaps, or fear. But she recovered quickly, smiling that practiced smile. Of course, she agreed. If it's important to you, then Seth is welcome. Good, Clayton said, releasing her. Then I'll see you tonight. I have a few more things to arrange for tomorrow. You don't want me to stay? The disappointment in her voice sounded genuine. Tonight, Clayton promised. We'll have plenty of time to talk then. After Delaney left, Clayton stood alone in his living room, a strange sense of calm washing over him. The die was cast. There was no turning back now that he picked up his phone and sent identical messages to Warren and Josie. She took the bait. Everything's set for tonight. Then he dialed another number, the final piece of his plan. Hello, Mr. Henderson. Clayton Mercer. About that recording equipment we discussed. Marquet Provisions was known for its intimate private dining room and exceptional farm-to-table cuisine. Clayton had chosen it carefully upscale enough to appeal to the Brock sensibilities, but not so formal that his own friends would feel out of place. The restaurant itself functioned as a crossroads in Eugene society, where old money and new enterprise sometimes intermingled but rarely truly connected. He arrived an hour early to oversee the final preparations. The table was set for 12, crystal glasses catching the light from the overhead chandelier. At each place setting, a small envelope held a customized menu and, for certain guests, something more. The audio-visual setup is ready, confirmed Henderson, a thin, unassuming man whose company provided sound equipment for corporate events. Wireless mic is connected to the speakers. Projectors sync to your laptop. Just hit this button when you're ready. He demonstrated with a small remote. Clayton nodded his thanks, slipping the man his final payment plus a generous tip. Remember, discretion is key. As far as anyone knows, you're just the AV guy for a rehearsal dinner presentation. Understood, Henderson agreed, packing up his toolkit. I'll be in the corner if you need any adjustments. Warren arrived next, followed closely by Josie. They both wore expressions of grim determination tempered with nervous energy. Everything's set, Warren asked, surveying the room. Clayton nodded. Just as planned. Josie straightened one of the place cards. The audio from the rehearsal dinner is ready to go. Queued up and crystal clear. Thanks to your recording, Clayton confirmed. And the financial documents are loaded on the slide deck. Warren checked his watch. T-minus 30 minutes. You ready for this, Clay? Clayton took a deep breath, adjusting his tie. He'd chosen a simple charcoal suit tonight, no designer labels, nothing purchased under Delaney's guidance. Just a good, solid suit that fit him well. A suit that represented who he truly was. I've been ready since the moment they mocked my mother's memory, he replied quietly. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. But even as he said it, Clayton knew the line between those concepts was blurring. What he planned tonight would destroy relationships, possibly careers. It would certainly end his engagement and likely ruin Delaney's carefully cultivated social standing. Was that justice? Or vengeance? He pushed the thought aside. Too late for doubts now. Guests began arriving precisely at 8. Bill Tanner and his wife came first, followed by 2 of Clayton's colleagues from the machine shop. They all looked slightly uncomfortable in the upscale setting, but grateful to be included. Appreciate the invitation, Bill said, shaking Clayton's hand firmly. Wasn't sure we'd make the cut for the actual wedding. Pretty fancy affair, from what I hear. Your family, Bill, Clayton replied sincerely. None of this would be happening without you. Bill didn't know how literal that statement was. The Brocks arrived next Silas in an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide his expanding waistline, Darla in a designer dress that probably cost more than Clayton's monthly mortgage payment. They moved with the easy confidence of people accustomed to being the most important individuals in any room. Clayton, Silas boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. Quite the production for a rehearsal dinner do-over. What prompted this? Just wanted everything to be perfect, Clayton replied evenly. Clear the air before tomorrow. Darla surveyed the room with a critical eye. Marquet is an interesting choice. I suppose it has a certain rustic charm. The condescension in her tone was so habitual she probably didn't even recognize it anymore. Clayton simply smiled, guiding them to their seats, carefully positioned directly across from where he would be sitting. Seth McAllister arrived next, his confident swagger momentarily faltering when he spotted Silas and Darla. He'd evidently assumed this would be a smaller gathering. "Clayton," he greeted with forced casualness. "Wouldn't have pegged you for the Marquet type." Full of surprises, Clayton replied, extending a hand that Seth had no choice but to shake. "Thanks for coming. Delaney tells me you two are good friends." Seth's handshake was firm, but his eyes shifted nervously. "Yeah, sure. We know each other from around." "From around," Clayton repeated with a thin smile. "Have a seat. We've saved you a spot." He directed Seth to a chair that would place him directly in Silas's line of sight. Last to arrive was Delaney, her entrance time for maximum impact, as always. She wore a cream-colored dress that subtly evoked bridal elegance without being too obvious. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw Seth already seated, but she recovered quickly, moving to kiss Clayton's cheek. "This is wonderful," she murmured. "Thank you for arranging it." Clayton held her chair as she sat beside him, noting the careful distance she maintained from Seth while still exchanging a brief, loaded glance with him. Even now, the deception continued. As appetizers were served, conversation flowed with artificial ease. Silas dominated with stories about his business triumphs, carefully avoiding any mention of current difficulties. Darla critiqued the wine selection while simultaneously drinking more than her share. Clayton observed it all with detached interest, like a scientist watching specimens in a lab. When the main course arrived, Clayton stood, tapping his glass lightly for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him expectantly. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight," he began, his voice steady and measured. "Especially those who traveled from out of town." He raised his glass. "I wanted tonight to be a celebration of honesty. Because honesty is what real relationships are built on." Delaney beamed up at him, clearly interpreting this as a reconciliation speech. Seth shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Silas and Darla exchanged pleased glances, obviously believing their future son-in-law had come to his senses after yesterday's rudeness. "When I proposed to Delaney," Clayton continued, "I thought I was the luckiest man alive. She was beautiful, charming, and seemed to value the same things I did: loyalty, integrity, honesty." Warren caught Clayton's eye across the table, giving an almost imperceptible nod. The trap was about to spring. "But I've learned something important recently," Clayton said, his voice hardening slightly. "People aren't always what they seem. Sometimes the truth lies beneath the surface." Confusion flickered across Delaney's face. "Clay, what are you talking about?" Clayton ignored her, reaching below the table to retrieve his leather portfolio. "I believe in transparency, in putting all cards on the table." He began distributing printed pages around the table. "So I thought we should start our new life together by clearing the air." Completely. Silence fell as people began examining the papers in front of them. Delaney's face drained of color as she recognized her own text messages to Seth, explicit exchanges, arrangements for meetings, intimate photos. Seth froze, eyes darting between Delaney and her father. "What the hell is this?" Silas demanded, his face flushing dark red as he scanned the pages. "Evidence," Clayton replied calmly, "of a 7-month affair between your daughter and Mr. McAllister, while we were engaged, while we were planning our wedding." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Darla's hand flew to her throat in a theatrical gesture of dismay. "Clayton," Delaney gasped, her voice trembling. "I can explain." "Please do," he invited, his tone icy. "Explain the text messages, the hotel receipts, the photos. I'm particularly interested in your explanation for the messages about me being your safe plan during your family's financial difficulties." Silas's head snapped up. "What financial difficulties?" Clayton pressed the remote in his pocket. The projector hummed to life, displaying financial records on the wall behind him, spreadsheets showing mounting debt, missed payments, dwindling reserves. "Brock Freight is 3 months behind on payments to suppliers," Clayton stated flatly. "Your line of credit is maxed out. Your fuel surcharges haven't been passed on to drivers. According to my sources, You're weeks away from defaulting on loan payments. The color drained from Silas's face. Where did you get these documents? This is private company information. I'm in manufacturing, Clayton reminded him. I work with your clients. Word gets around when shipments are consistently late and quality control is slipping. He turned to Delaney. But you already knew all this, didn't you? That's why you needed a safe plan. Delaney's composure cracked entirely. Tears streaked her makeup as she reached for Clayton's arm. Please, Clay, it wasn't like that. I love you. Seth was a mistake. Seth stood abruptly. A mistake? You told me he was just a placeholder until your dad's business recovered. That we'd be together once you got your inheritance. Sit down, hissed Delaney, but the damage was done. Clayton pressed the remote again. The speakers crackled to life, and Darla's voice filled the room. We're thrilled to welcome Clayton, despite his humble beginnings. And I know Marianne is watching from wherever. Then Delaney's voice. Clayton's always needed a bit of polishing. The recording continued, capturing the laughter, the mockery, the casual cruelty of the rehearsal dinner toasts. Clayton surveyed the room, noting the shocked expressions, the discomfort, the dawning realization of what was happening. This wasn't a recommitment dinner. It was an execution. Marianne Mercer taught me to never be anyone's fool, he said, his voice steady and clear. She raised me to value loyalty, honesty, and integrity. She worked herself to the bone to give me a good life, and she died with dignity. Her name, my name, deserves respect. He turned to face Delaney directly. I'm keeping her name clean and walking away with my dignity. You've got each other. With deliberate calm, Clayton gathered his laptop and portfolio. He nodded to Warren and Josie, who stood in silent solidarity. The wedding is off, he announced to the stunned room. I've already notified the venue and vendors. The deposits were in my name, so that's my loss. Consider it the price of seeing the truth before making an even bigger mistake. He moved toward the door, pausing to address Silas and Darla one final time. You were right about one thing. I don't belong in your world. And thank God for that. As Clayton walked out, Delaney's desperate calls of his name echoed behind him. He didn't look back. Outside Marquet, the cool evening air filled Clayton's lungs as he took his first deep breath in what felt like hours. Warren and Josie flanked him as they walked to their cars, a protective formation forged through years of friendship and family loyalty. From inside the restaurant, Ray's voices could be heard, Silas's bellowing anger, Delaney's tearful protestations, Seth's defensive retorts. The carefully constructed social facade of the Brock family was crumbling in real time. You okay? Josie asked quietly, studying Clayton's profile. He considered the question seriously. Was he okay? The woman he'd planned to marry had betrayed him in the most fundamental way possible. Her family had mocked his upbringing and dishonored his mother's memory. He just publicly exposed their deception and financial troubles in front of colleagues and peers. I will be, he answered finally. It needed to be done. Warren clapped him on the shoulder. Damn right it did. You stood up not just for yourself, but for Marianne too. As they reached their vehicles, the restaurant door burst open behind them. Delaney rushed out, mascara streaking down her flushed cheeks, hair disheveled from running fingers through it in distress. Clayton, she called, her voice breaking. Please wait. Warren and Josie tensed, moving slightly in front of Clayton in a protective gesture. He placed a hand on each of their shoulders, gently moving them aside. It's okay, he told them quietly. I can handle this. He turned to face Delaney, his expression neutral. There's nothing left to say. How could you do this? She demanded, anger suddenly overtaking her distress. Humiliate me in front of everyone? Expose my father's business troubles? Do you have any idea what you've done? Clayton regarded her steadily. I showed people who you really are, who your family really is. I gave you exactly what you've been giving me for months, lies wrapped in pretty packaging. I made a mistake. Delaney cried, reaching for his arm. People make mistakes, Clay. If you really loved me, you'd forgive me. This wasn't a mistake, Clayton corrected her. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or saying something hurtful in anger. This was a calculated deception. 7 months, Delaney. You were sleeping with him before I even proposed. Her composure cracked further. It wasn't serious with Seth. It was just physical. What we had was real. Was it? Or was I just your safety net? Your stable option while your father's business collapsed. Delaney flinched as her own words came back to her. Behind her, Seth emerged from the restaurant, his expression a mixture of anger and embarrassment. You two deserve each other, Clayton told them, a note of finality in his voice. Built on lies from the beginning. Seth approached, his demeanor aggressive despite the fact that Clayton had several inches and 30 pounds of muscle on him. You had no right to drag me into your relationship drama, Mercer. Clayton's laugh was short and without humor. I didn't drag you anywhere, McAllister. You climbed into my fiancée's bed all on your own. She came to me, Seth retorted, his pride overriding his better judgment. Practically begged for it. Said you couldn't satisfy her. Rage flashed through Clayton, hot and demanding. For a brief moment, he considered the satisfaction of connecting his fist with Seth's carefully maintained jawline. But violence was the easy path, the expected response. Clayton had chosen a different kind of justice. And now you can have her, he replied evenly, along with her father's debt and her mother's social climbing. Enjoy. He turned to go, but Delaney grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. You can't just walk away. We're getting married tomorrow. No, Clayton said firmly, removing her hand. We're not. It's over, Delaney. I don't love you anymore. I'm not sure I ever really knew you to begin with. Her face contorted with a mixture of grief and fury. You'll regret this, she hissed. You think you're so righteous, but you're just a vindictive, small-town nobody who couldn't handle a real relationship. Clayton simply shook his head. Goodbye, Delaney. As he turned away, Seth called after him. She's right, you know. You'll never find anyone like her again. Thank God for that, Clayton replied without looking back, that he climbed into his truck, Warren and Josie following in their own vehicles. As they pulled away from Marquet, Clayton watched in the rearview mirror as Delaney collapsed into tears on the sidewalk, Seth standing awkwardly beside her, clearly reconsidering his involvement with the Brock family drama. IT should have felt like victory. Instead, Clayton felt something quieter, a sense of closure, of chains being broken, of a path forward suddenly clearing before him. It's done, he murmured to himself, the words both an acknowledgement and a release that in the weeks that followed. Clayton watched the fallout of his actions from a careful distance. He didn't seek updates or gossip, but Eugene was a small enough city that news traveled, especially news as juicy as a scandal involving one of the community's prominent families. The canceled wedding made the local society page a brief, tasteful announcement citing irreconcilable differences. What wasn't mentioned was the more dramatic story circulating through Eugene's social circles. How Delaney Brock had been exposed as a cheater, how Silas Brock's financial empire was teetering on the edge of collapse, how Darla Brock had been snubbed at 3 consecutive charity events. Clayton hadn't planned to part the social ostracism, but he wasn't surprised by it. People who built their lives on appearance and status were particularly vulnerable to public humiliation. The same social climbing that had defined the Brock's existence became the ladder they couldn't descend gracefully 1 month after the would-be wedding date. Clayton sat in Bill Tanner's office, reviewing the operational budget for the coming quarter. These numbers look good, Bill said, leaning back in his chair. You've got a knack for this stuff, Clay. More than I ever did. Clayton shrugged. Just trying to be thorough. Well, the thoroughness is paying off. Which brings me to why I asked you here today. Bill slid a folder across the desk. I'm not waiting until next year. The operations manager position is yours if you want it. Effective immediately. Clayton stared at the folder, momentarily speechless. What happened to waiting until you retire? Life's too short to wait for good things, Bill replied, a knowing look in his eyes. Besides, you've more than proven yourself. The way you handled that Westbrook crisis last week saved us a major contract. Thank you, Clayton said, genuine gratitude in his voice. I won't let you down. I know you won't. You're Mercer. Your word is your bond. Bill stood, extending his hand. Your mother would be proud, Clay. As Clayton left Bill's office, promotion paperwork in hand, his phone buzzed with a text from Warren. News on the Brock front. Call me when you can. He waited until he was in his truck, parked in the company lot, before making the call. "What's up?" he asked when Warren answered. "Heard from Jerry Westbrook this morning." Warren replied, without preamble. Brock Freight lost their contract. Apparently, 3 other major clients pulled out too after word got around about their financial situation. Clayton absorbed this information without comment. He hadn't wished for the collapse of Silas's business, merely the exposure of the truth. But actions had consequences, a lesson the Brocks were learning the hard way. "That's not all," Warren continued. "Seth McAllister's engaged." "That was fast." "Not to Delaney," Warren clarified. "To some investor's daughter from Portland. Apparently, he needs capital for a second gym location." Clayton laughed softly, unsurprised, always chasing the next opportunity. As for Delaney, word is she's moved back in with her parents. Darla's telling everyone she's taking time to heal, but Madison ran into her at Starbucks yesterday. Said she looked rough, like she's not sleeping. Despite everything, a twinge of something like compassion flickered through Clayton. He didn't wish Delaney personal suffering, despite her betrayal. But he couldn't deny the justice in her experiencing the consequences of her actions. "You rebuilding that old Chevy this weekend?" Clayton asked, deliberately changing the subject. "I could come by, lend a hand." Warren recognized the shift for what it was. "Yeah, Saturday. Bring beer. Josie's coming too, says she needs to make sure we don't mess it up." After ending the call, Clayton drove to the cemetery, a habit that had sustained him through the darkest days of the past month. At his mother's grave, he placed a small bunch of wildflowers, simple, unpretentious, beautiful in their natural way, like Marianne herself had been. "Got the promotion, Mom," he said, settling onto the bench nearby. "Operations manager. Not bad for a kid from the east side, huh?" The cemetery was peaceful in the late afternoon light, birds singing in the oak trees overhead. "I've been thinking about what you always said about how the measure of a person isn't what happens to them, but how they respond to it." He traced the engraved letters of her name with his eyes. "I hope I've made you proud in how I've handled all this." In the months that followed, Clayton threw himself into his new role at work, finding satisfaction in the challenges it presented. He expanded the community welding program he'd started in Marianne's honor, teaching teenagers the trade that had given him stability and pride. He reconnected with old friends, rediscovered old hobbies, rebuilt the life that had narrowed during his time with Delaney. Occasionally, he'd see one of the Brocks around town, Silas, noticeable thinner and gray at the temples, hurrying into a bank. Darla, still immaculately dressed but somehow diminished, shopping alone rather than with her usual entourage of society friends. Delaney, once from across a restaurant. Her eyes meeting his briefly before both looked away. Those moments brought no satisfaction, no triumph. Only a quiet acknowledgement that life moved on, that actions had consequences, that the truth eventually found its way to the surface. 1 year after the day that would have been his wedding, Clayton hosted a barbecue in his backyard. The gathering was small. Warren and his new girlfriend, Josie, and her husband, Bill, and his wife, a few close friends from work. Simple food, cold beer, honest conversation, as the summer evening deepened into twilight. Warren raised his bottle in a toast. To Marianne and to Clay, who doesn't take crap from anyone. Clayton smirked, raising his own bottle. "Damn right." Later, as the guests departed and Clayton cleaned up alone in his kitchen, he found himself reflecting on the journey of the past year. He had lost what he thought was love, but gained something more valuable: self-respect, clarity, purpose. He had survived betrayal not by becoming bitter, but by becoming better. Marianne would indeed be proud. As he turned off the lights and headed to bed, Clayton felt at peace with his choices, with his life, with himself. The Brock chapter was closed. Whatever came next, he would face it on his own terms, with his integrity intact and his head held high, and second chances needed.